All right, welcome to episode 313. I'm Chad. Matt should be here in a little bit. He's running a little bit behind, but that's okay because our guest is here, Chris Condon. How's it going, man?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to do this. And I know it was kind of a cold request after seeing something you posted on Blue Sky one weekend, and it's like, oh, that'd be interesting to talk about.
For
Anyway,
sure. This is the first time anybody's reached out to me about talking some Star Wars.
mm.
So I'm excited to do it.
So well, I know you've been on the show years ago, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? First off, let's start as your about your journey as a comic book reader. Do you remember the first book you read, or the one that kind of got you into the hobby?
Sure. So my name is Chris Condon. I am a writer of comic books. I've written comic books when I was last on the show. It must have been that Texas Blood that I was talking about. So a lot has changed since then. So I've
Written a
written
few more
that
things.
Texas, yeah, just a few things. But that Texas Blood, the Enfield Game Massacre, its spinoff, News from the Fallout of the Earth. I've written Ultimate Wolverine, Green Arrow, an adaptation of Night People. I've written a lot of stuff, varied, mixed, and a lot of fun, different genres. And I'm very fortunate to have been asked to write a Star Wars Rogue One Darth Vader one shot, which was a whole heck of a lot of fun.
So, um, like I asked, do you remember maybe the first comic book you read, or the one that got you interested in the
Sure. So I think it's weird because I think I read comic strips first. So I think that I was reading them in the newspaper first. I was a big fan of Peanuts. I really loved everything from The Wizard of Id to uh, Mutts to Baby Blues, and I loved everything. I really read a little bit of everything in the newspaper, and then I kind of started doing strips based on those. But I mean, my first comic books, I remember there was when you bought a toy when Batman and Robin was coming out, they would have these giveaway facsimiles of the first appearance of Mister Freeze when he was Mister Zero, or Batgirl. So those were some of the first superhero comics that I remember owning. I kind of got into superheroes through cartoons and movies. I loved Batman. And so that was kind of my first comics. I think were those giveaways. And then I remember going to a shop and buying, there were some Gene Colan Daredevils, and also I remember Batman Hush was really cool. I loved all the Jim Lee art on those. And there was also, I really loved this series, Batman Gotham Knights, and
yes.
it was they had these great Brian Boland covers, and I remember there was a Scarecrow one that I loved. But yeah, so that was kind of the stuff that I was into early on.
And what was what kind of said, I want to do this. I want to write these things.
Well, that's kind of the thing. There never was a I'm going to do this. I just always did it. I was, even from those early days of doing the comic strips. I drew a comic strip for the elementary school. I was also creating superhero comics at home with my best friend Mike, who now makes comics with me as well. Um, so I've always been doing it to varying degrees. Even in high school, I remember there was some creative writing assignment for this one English class I had, and I was like, since it's a creative writing thing, can I do a comic instead? And she said yes. I drew like a 10-page comic for this assignment. So I've always been doing it. Just always kind of been. I love it. It's fun. Um, and so I always have been doing it, and it just was always second nature. Like even how I got into doing that Texas Blood with Jake. I was going to write and draw a comic on my own just because I wanted to. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm already working with this guy on this thing. Should probably do that one. And then, career happened.
And it has really taken off over the past couple of years. And
yeah, it's been wild.
So why don't we start off with Star Wars, because I'm a Star Wars person, and it's hard to believe that Rogue One is 10 years old.
I know. It feels very fresh still.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Andor series that came out, that was nice to watch those 2 seasons and then have a better more of the story to be told, that we already saw.
Sure. Yeah.
So what was your first experience with Star Wars? Was it just like comic books always something that you were?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I remember there was a VHS set so there's 2 ends, and I don't know which one came first, but there were the Power of the Force action figures in the 90s, and I devoured those. I loved them. They were like my favorite thing, and I credit them with learning how to tell stories, because that was where I first was doing, writing. I was like figuring out scenes and making little moments with these action figures. But I remember specifically there was a VHS set, a 3-film set, that had the half faces of Vader, Stormtrooper, and Yoda. And that was the last time that they were available on VHS in the theatrical.
I think it was the extended editions, the new remaster.
This was the theatrical. Yeah, this was the last time. In fact, that was on the front of every single VHS, was ordered for the last time. And it turned out to be true. As a matter of fact, I don't think I believed it when I was a kid, but it turned out to be true. Yeah, so that those were coming out. It was kind of like a big deal. Maybe, I don't remember, 93 or 94. I don't remember when it was. Whenever it was before the special editions. Maybe it was 95 even. But anyway, I remember those movies were coming out, and I went to the store, and I only wanted the one with Yoda on it because I loved Yoda. He was really cool looking to me. I was obsessed with Yoda, and I just wanted that one. My mom convinced me, little 3 or 4-year-old Chris, that we should just get the set because then you have all the movies. And I was like, all right. But so I think that was watching them on VHS. It was my first experience with Star Wars, and I watched them in the original theatrical presentations, and also was introduced to Leonard Maltin very early on in life because he did an interview at the start of every single VHS tape. But that was how I was introduced to Star Wars. It was very much, sort of this, just love at first sight. And I just fell head over heels with this, property. It's like crazy because, it really does, become a part of your life. And I feel like Star Wars is a part of my life, because I mean, it's been here as long as my best friend and I have known each other, so it's pretty crazy to now be sitting here having written something, wild.
I mean, I remember there was a time when they would like play the movies on on the USA or something, like on the weekends, and it's like, oh, we got to watch Star Wars again. Now it's like, it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
So, well, let's talk about your Rogue One shot. Kind of an interesting one because it don't spoil anything that you can't spoil, obviously. But your character is Darth Vader. The one character who appears at the very end of the movie and really doesn't do anything except for.
Yes. So without spoiling anything, I rewatched Rogue One and I rewatched all of Andor, and I decided Vader has really no place here. It's largely a Vaderless story, and it really works because of that. So I was like, how do you do a Rogue One Vader one shot? And then I realized he was just the cleaver. He comes in and just breaks things. And I was like, that's it. That's the one shot. So everything about the moments that Vader is in Rogue One, that is the one shot. So I approached it with that exact same mentality of what have we wanted to see for X number of years, you know? Let's fulfill those wishes, kind of thing. So there's a lot of really cool Vader moments, I think, in the one shot, and it was drawn really wonderfully by Luke Ross.
Who I think Luke Ross has worked on some of the Star Wars titles.
Oh yeah, he's a veteran for sure.
Yeah. So, was it intimidating to have to be the one to be writing about Darth Vader and because there's a lot of stories about Darth Vader and the mythos surrounding him and
yeah, it's really funny because I was so excited about it. I really was. Yeah, I didn't feel the intimidation. I mean, I think that there certainly is the, I want to live up to expectations. That's certainly part of it, but I don't feel intimidated by it. I actually felt really excited by it. It was really, to me, it was a culmination of those years playing with the Power of the Force action figures, coming to a head. Like this is something that I've wanted to do my entire life, So I really hope everybody else sees it as I do, because I'm like, I really feel like this was just something that I've been kind of born to write at this point. I mean, this is it was something that for me was just like, ooh, I get to go back and play with those toys again. That's kind of how I felt about it.
So, along with Darth Vader, if I remember reading the solicit correctly, you're also writing Krennic, right? Correct. How was it, getting into his head? Because he's and Andor and in the movie he's kind of the I would say the main bad guy at the time.
Yeah. I mean, it still is very much Vader's book. But yeah, Krennic was, I think he's a really interesting person. And I love the relationship that he has with Vader. Which, if you rewatch that scene in Vader's castle, it is really interesting, the dynamic. And so I sort of based the dynamics of things in the comic off of that scene, and kind of also built off of how he interacts without Vader in the room. He has a different posture. He's much more self-assured. And so it's fun to get to play with those dynamics.
Because as you were saying, I don't know if you've read any of the books like Catalyst, where it's more like about when they're building the Death Star, and he's kind of also he's kind of bullying Urso into building the technology and all that, and it's fun to see how he changes when he's around his
exactly.
when he's not the superior he thinks he is.
Exactly.
And how did you have to getting into his head? Was it a different manner than getting into Vader's head?
Yeah, I mean, again, you kind of have to put yourself into their shoes when you're writing it, so you kind of have to think about it from that sort of perspective. So like when Vader comes into a room, like he commands the room, like he becomes the center of attention. So yeah, I think you got to get into the mindset of these characters. It's like, it's definitely like alpha dog stuff. And so, just knowing that, and just knowing the kind of the duality of the Krennic character, you know, it's definitely, I mean, you just kind of have to, it's like, you know, role playing. You just have to like put yourself in the head of the character. So any particular character that I'm writing, that's like, I'm just like, I'm absorbing as much as I can from the things that are available. And then kind of playing with it and seeing what feels organic, feels real to those existing pieces of canon.
So these one shots, they don't interconnect anyway. They're just kind of tangentially from looking at different characters in the movie, correct?
Well, I can't speak to the others, but
Okay.
mine is certainly on its own. I mean, it plays into the larger Rogue One of it all,
Right.
but it stands on its own. I wasn't given any outlines or anything like that for what other people were doing. So yeah, no, this is a standalone, and I kind of like that it's a standalone. I think it would have suffered, just because it's a one shot and you only have so much space. So I think that it really works well because it is standalone, and it feels like it should be that way.
And how was it working with Luke? Because since he is a veteran on the Star Wars books, did he kind of give you some tips on how to stage things, or did you kind of work with him and let him you know I don't know what the words I'm looking for, but I think
Do art.
Yes.
No, yeah, it was kind of a back and forth. So the way I write scripts, I kind of write them with a lot of description, and I kind of do I do like, not only do I do the number of panels that are in a scene, but I do camera angles and the whole thing. So I can kind of, the idea in my head when I write a script is that I want to have the artist be able to see it. I want them to be able to think about, okay, this panel is a medium wide and it goes, first, and might be a bigger panel, so it's on its own. However it's laid out. And so I kind of have a lot of description in it. So I kind of pointing him a certain way, and then he would send in the art, and then we would kind of bounce things back and forth from there. Hello.
Hi, I am so sorry, Chris. My daughter's recital tonight ran about 20 minutes longer than normally would, and well, here I am, 20 minutes late.
All good. Happy to have you.
We were just kind of talking about his Vader one shot. Now you've written for TV and movies also, am I correct?
Not exactly, but
okay. Nice.
Sort of.
Did that kind of play into the way you were talking about how you set things up for Luke?
Kind of. I mean, they're both visual mediums, right? But it's I was just actually, I did a talk at Rutgers University actually over Zoom. So I was actually just talking about this, but yeah, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Oh, we were talking about camera angles, as a
right
between the mediums.
So I know exactly where I was going with this. I went off on a tangent about how I was at Rutgers and I lost my train of thought. But no, so well, they're both visual mediums, right? But the difference is that if you're working on a screenplay, you're sort of just writing like a rough sort of visual guide as to what goes on. But when you write a comic script, at least the way that I do it, and even the finished copy, I mean, this is, you need it to be perfect because that's how it's going out there. When you're writing a screenplay, there's like 7 more steps ahead of you. When you're writing a comic script, there's, it goes from me to the artist, and then we send it out to you guys so you can read it. So it's really a direct path. So I mean, I think that there's a difference, but it certainly, I mean, the visual language of it translated over for sure. But yeah, I don't know how much it actually helped, but I mean, definitely I wanted to kind of evoke the feeling that I get watching the movies as much as I do reading the comics. Like one of the great things about the films for me, that I think is important, is just how much stuff is in a frame, in the background, and and there's just always something happening. It's like there's that one shot in Return of the Jedi of Jabba's palace, and there's the frog and the toad in the foreground. Like that, I think, is like Star Wars to me. So I think that it's important to include details like that. So like that's kind of how I approach things, is that I'm thinking about like what that thing in the foreground is. So part of it is informed by the films for sure, and I try to evoke that feeling in the scripts.
Well, I didn't see Jabba's Palace until I was either 8 or 9, because I was five when the movie originally came out in theaters, and I remember looking at the back of the theater during that period part. So, Matt.
Hey, here we are. That's okay. My embarrassing Star Wars story is that when I was a little kid, like 4 or 5 years old or something, I saw Obi-Wan's Force Ghost for the first time and assumed it was Jesus. So, that was my youngest exposure to Star Wars. But there's a lot of cool stuff that's going on right now on top of this Rogue One shot. Like what? I mean, Ultimate Wolverine just finished, and you got Peril of the Brutal Dark, and then that Texas Blood is returning this summer. Where do you find the time to keep all of this balanced?
And of the Earth, my new book with Charlie Adler, and my co-writer,
yes,
Andrew Eric. Yeah, now it's I don't know. You just got to do it. It's just part of the game, You just need to constantly be working. It's a job where it's you have to hustle. You got to be putting out books. It's just part of the game. You got to stay relevant. You got to put out books. You got to put out good books. It's part of the life. It's just. For me, it's like I just like to do varied things. I want to try to do a little bit of everything. Like there's differences between every single book I'm doing. Like Ultimate Wolverine is this action sci-fi graphic series. Then there's Green Arrow, which is very much a grounded social justice series. Then obviously that Texas Blood, neo-noir, Texas Western. It's like I'm doing a little bit of everything. I like to try to spread myself out because I don't want to get bored with any one thing.
Right.
You're also, and please, if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. You're also doing The Ultimate Reborn, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm doing Reborn. Yeah,
again, you have so many things. You're spinning so many plates.
Stefano Caselli, who is an awesome guy.
Matt, do you have anything?
Oh no, I thought you were about to say something, Chad. I was hesitating.
No, I was swallowing.
Oh, difference there. So, what was it like getting in on the ground floor at in the Ultimate Universe, writing Ultimate Wolverine and recreating not just him but also the Winter Soldier mythos and sort of blending it together?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really funny because I did not expect it to be what it became, which was a very big book. So
Well, I think it was initially supposed to have been 12 issues or something, right?
right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's that. It's a skin in Marvel Rivals. They just made a Marvel Legends toy, so it's just like it's crazy. What's happened? I remember buying a Iron Man Marvel Legends toy when the first wave came out. It feels full circle in a lot of ways. But yeah, no, I just I got this offer. I got an email from Will Moss, who I knew of. I loved Immortal Hulk, but did not know. And he asked me if I was interested in hopping on the phone with him. And I was like, I knew who he was, so I knew what kind of books he did, and I was like, I wonder what he's going to ask me about. And he asked me if I had any interest in doing Ultimate Wolverine. And it was like right then and there that I was like, I want to do something with Weapon X. Like I want to do like a version of Weapon X. It's one of my all-time favorite stories. I think it's one of the best comic books of all time. I was like, I'd love to do a spin on that in the Ultimate Universe. And he was like, maybe you could do something in Russia in this universe because there's already mutants there. There's Colossus Magic and Omega Red. And I was like, oh, well, maybe we could do that. Maybe we could do, the Winter Soldier program instead of the Weapon X program. And that was it. I remember saying to him, but I'll try to think of something better. And that was the book.
Well, I would say
I was too dumb to recognize it.
I would say the series certainly succeeded past anyone's wildest imagination. I mean, with the 4-issue extension, given how popular it was, and you worked with some crazy talented artists too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and all the artists on the book were fantastic. Alessandro Capuccio, obviously, doing the lion's share of work on the book, and just a fantastic draftsman. I think some particular issues are like really highlight what he does well. I think issue 4 is an absolutely beautiful, beautifully illustrated book. But yeah, there was also Alex Linz, who is phenomenal. Very different style, really unique. And then Domenico Carbone as well, who did issue 13 for us.
Now, since you're writing all these different books with the different genres, you have the superhero, you have the sci-fi, you have the crime noir. Do you have to set certain times aside to focus on each one, or is it whenever you're inspired to
you kind of have to write each day, right? But what you write is dependent upon what strikes you at that time. Like sometimes you just you could put words on a page, but you're gonna have to go back and re-edit it because you're just putting garbage out. But yeah, it's kind of you have to follow your muse. Sometimes if you can't write, you just can't write. So you work on something else. And so yeah, I've even today, I've been bouncing around between 3 different things and just kind of working piecemeal on them, and just, a little bit of progress here and a little bit of progress there. And then you have a full script at the end of the day. So, but yeah, it's, just trying to, maintain, remembering, where I'm at with the characters and all that, and just trying to get in the right headspace when you're working on it. So I usually go back and reread a little bit, further back and then lead myself into it when I'm working on a thing.
And do you find it?
Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
To that end, it's been a couple years since that Texas Blood last saw the light of day. Was it difficult to get back into that kind of neo-noir Western headspace?
No, yeah, I mean, a little. It definitely growing pains for sure. I don't think that it was hard, kind of stepping back into the boots per se.
Right on.
Because I do feel like Joe Bob is really recognizable in my head. I know what he says. So there were certain things that did just immediately jive, and then there were other things that were sort of I needed to find sort of the storytelling style. It's sort of just the layouts of pages and how scenes sort of take their time. Really take their time, because Of the Earth is another book that is a slow burn, but it's a very different style. It's a very tense slow burn, whereas that Texas Blood, there's it really, there's like a slowness to it that feels organic and very like lifelike, like very real. And I think that's kind of what's really great about what we do on it. You know, that's like, I feel like really like that's what makes us unique. So yeah, I don't know. There were times where it was kind of difficult to figure out that pacing, but you know, with a little practice, I got back into the groove.
Right on.
Now, again, since you're jumping around genres, is it difficult to go from your creator-owned stuff to something where you have a tighter sandbox that you have to play in? Or is it
Well,
just how you think about the project?
so there's a little bit of a difference. So with some projects, companies like really want you to outline things, like very detailed outlines. So you have to follow those outlines when you're scripting. So that can change how you tell a story. When I do that Texas Blood, specifically that Texas Blood and the Info Gang Massacre, I write these two specifically like this. I write very rough outlines so that the book feels organic, because it is organic. It's sort of like just like I like to let the scenes play out because I want to see what the characters say to each other. I put them in a situation. I kind of think this is where things are going, so I'm gonna like push things this way. But sometimes scenes go a different way because the characters are saying one thing, and I'm like, well, shit. Now we got to figure this out. So there's a very organic feel to it, and there was a little bit difficult getting back into that. But once the thing strikes, it's like, okay, I'm in it.
Tell us a little bit more about Of the Earth, because that's kind of your latest project that is brand new territory for you.
Sure, yeah, it's a really fun. It's pretty intense. It's pretty dark. It is a horror book that has a lot of noirish tones to it, which is on purpose. I do think that they're very close relatives, and sometimes they can overlap, and I think it's quite special when they overlap. I think that there's aspects of horror in noir. I think that it's people making very dramatic decisions that have very dramatic implications for their lives, which is a thing that happens in horror too. So
Sure.
I do think that they're very similar. But yeah, I'm co-writing this with Andrew Eric, who's a really good friend of mine, and this is his first book. And I brought him on because I love that he has a vast knowledge of horror and writes great horror. He just hasn't had a chance to be able to publish it or to find a home for it. So I brought him on this to kind of show that he has the chops to do this on his own, and we'll write the story and it will feel organically me, but he will have played a role in it. He's written full issues and has also revised each issue with me. He's co-written the back matter as well, so and again, we're revising everything together so it feels organic. It feels part of the same voice. But yeah, it's like, in my mind, what this is it's a roller coaster ride. It's the terror of the climb to the top, and then the steep drop down and all the twists and turns that follow. This is a story about a woman named Tabitha Black. She is running from a past that she wants to forget, and she has taken some money from a bad boyfriend, and she is on the run. And she has ditched her phone. She's got a burner phone, and she's going home, which is the last place anybody would look for her. So she's going home after a decade, and as she gets home, things start going very badly. Everything starts going from bad to worse, and then she gets home, and home isn't what it once was, and things go from there.
Who's your artist on the book?
So it is Charlie Adlard, who is an absolute legend in the industry. And I'm so proud to be working with him on this. And, we did 2 EC shorts together. We did one about the 8th dwarf and the 7 dwarfs. His name was Vengeful, and things don't end well. And then we also did a sort of an esoteric kind of horror story called Crossroads Repetition, which is sort of a sweet story about time loops. But so we did some work before, and we liked working with each other, so we were like, let's find something to do together. And so I had this story cooking already, and we're still tooling it around and feeling it out and seeing what it was. And then we did it. We decided to do this together, and he killed it. And I actually was just reviewing the pages for issue 5 today with Pip's colors on it, and it's just like, whew, it is so cool. I was sending some screenshots to people, and they were like, "Oh my god!" It's really nice. Pip Martin is doing fantastic work on the book too. The colorist. Pip Martin. She did Everything Dead and Dying recently, Event Horizon, and Event Horizon Dark Descent, the first one that Christian did. And then she also colored. She got started on That Texas Blood as Jake's color assistant, and then she did do a 3 World 3 Moon story that Jake and I did together as well. So she's fantastic. This book is really, a playground for her. She is showing her stuff, and it looks amazing. Specifically, these last few issues are just amazing. And then Hassan Otsman-Elhaou is lettering the book, and Michael Tivey is doing the design on the book as well. And he previously did News from the Fallout. He also did Peril of the Brutal Dark and Ezra Kane Mystery, and he's coming onto That Texas Blood as well. And Haas is coming onto That Texas Blood as well too.
Man, you've attracted some star talent, my friend. Congratulations.
We're in it now.
You're in it now. So is Of the Earth envisioned as, is it a mini series or is it envisioned as a long format series?
Well, after we finished up, I was like, dang, I should have just gotten you for 12 issues. Because there's a sequel I want to do, which I think will be a really cool addition to this first story. It really builds on it in a really fun, exciting way, and it's very intense, which is what the first one is. So it's like you gotta have it intense. So it is a 6-issue mini, in that we are doing the 6 issues, but there certainly is room to do more, and I would love to do more. So we were really hoping people like it and stick with it, because we would like to do more. But also, I think it's really good. It's really fun, and there's some pretty wild stuff that happens. It really, it's the best way to describe it is, like I said before, like a roller coaster. It's this creeping, paranoid dread, building up to that top hill, that first hill, and then you just plummet. And it really feels like that. Like issues 4, 5, and 6 are just like a sprint. And I really like how we set the book up and how it's laid out. And I'm really excited for people to read it. I hope they enjoy it. And then they want more, hopefully.
Heck yeah.
What is it about the kind of crime noir genre that, appeals to you and makes you want to...
I just think it's the most interesting kind of stories. I think that they're really, I think that it's, what's not to like? There's, people, men falling in love with women that they shouldn't, and they're making bad decisions because of that, and they're murdering people. And just, they're getting themselves into very much, a ton of trouble. And it just keeps mounting and mounting and mounting. It's just like it's the best kind of genre. And not only that, I mean, especially the, black and white noirs, the original noirs, it's like the way they shot them too was really unique and different and embraced German expressionist style, in terms of camera angles and uh, and shadows, the use of shadows and light and framing. You see some of the most interesting camera work in noirs. And then even in just written prose. I mean the the rapid fire Tommy gun language used in detective novels is just like the most interesting kind of writing. It's just snappy, it's quick, it's smart, and it's funny. And it's like you just want to live in that kind of prose. So for me, it's like it's just the most interesting kind of story, at the end of the day.
Right on. It's kind of got a little bit of something for everyone, really.
Hmm.
So, having written, a lot of things, how do you feel that you've grown as a writer from, when you first started to now?
Well, I didn't know what I was doing so much. So there's that. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, the style, in terms of how I actually like write a script has not changed. That has remained. So that's one thing that has remained the same. I do think that I've learned how to pace a story well. I think that I've learned how to, I think that I was good at character stuff from the start, but I really honed in on it. I think that I figured it out. And same thing with dialogue. I think that I figured dialogue out. Like, I think I was pretty good at it from the start, but I think that I kind of, figured it out. And then just kind of, where I was put in the industry, sort of like where, how I was allowed to run and, figure things out. Writing a book like Ultimate Wolverine, again, I didn't expect it to be as big as it was, but because it was as big as it was, that was a trial by fire. Like, I learned how to, you're going to have a lot of people online talking about you, and they're not always going to be saying the things you want them to be saying, and you're not always going to be agreeing with them. So it was an interesting experience to, be kind of thrust into the that wasn't really limelight, but be thrust into the proverbial limelight to kind of experience what that's like, and having a big book. But it is what it is. So I don't know. A lot has changed, but at the same time, I'm still tinkering. I do think that there was I was much more scatterbrained in terms of how I was writing. Like, I was writing a little bit of everything. I was writing screenplays and prose. Now it's very much centered on comic scripts. Like, I don't really branch out that much in terms of the stuff I'm writing. Although back matter is, its own thing.
Since you kind of brought it up, how do you, I guess, respond, or how do you take the feedback that you might see online, and does that kind of affect how you move forward?
And that's the difference, is that sometimes it's just people yelling at you. And that's, if there's legitimate criticism, I think that that's something that you can take in and absorb. But a lot of it is just sort of people just sort of
being comic fans
mean in a way. I don't think that people think about the creator when they're saying these things. I think that they're just, they love these characters and these properties, and they have a certain ideal of how things are supposed to go. And if they're not going the way they want them to go, they're not happy about it. So the people have ownership of these things. So I get it from that perspective. But I do think there are some things that are legitimate criticisms. However, sometimes the way that comics are written and the way that comics are produced, you're sometimes working months ahead of time. So by the time somebody's complaining about something, it's like way in the pipeline, and it's like there's no way I'm going to be able to fix what the issue is here. And I'm just like, well, it is what it is now. So I think that there's always going to be legitimate criticism. I try to get ahead of that. I send stuff out to friends, and I ask them to be honest with me. And sometimes people have notes, they have thoughts. Maybe you could do this better. Maybe this is, maybe this should be here or whatever. But it is what it is. Once you're putting out something and thousands of people are reading it, it's like you're going to get a lot of opinions.
Sure.
But what's
Well,
I was going to say, what's the most, I guess, useful advice that you've received, and do you remember who gave it to you? And
Well, useful in a few ways was advice from Ed Brubaker. So he said, "You're using too many words," and I was like, "Okay." And he was like, try, this is what I do. And he didn't use more than 28 words in a panel. So I think he might have been referring specifically to a 9-panel grid, but still, either way, in the next volume of That Texas Blood, which was volume 3, I used no more than 28 words per panel. And on top of that, it's a mostly silent comic. Because I really wanted to kind of take that advice and kind of apply it and see how far I could stretch it. I wanted to see if I could tell a story and have it feel dramatic and emotional and scary without any words on it. And then we kind of doubled up on that. We went all in on that in News from the Fallout, where there's at least 4 pages in the final issue that are black, just completely black panels.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, we're going to see if this works or not. And it worked. With most people, I think.
Well, News from the Fallout was a huge creative stretch for you and the creative team in terms of just like the visual execution and some of the tricks you were not tricks, that's the wrong word, but some of the techniques you were utilizing on each page. Like, was this kind of your want to experiment a little bit more getting played out?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the great things about Image Comics is that you don't have to convince them of too much. If you go in there with a good idea, they're going to go, that's a good idea. So working with Jeffrey Allen Love, it was a battle to get a book together with him. He is a great artist. He's a fantastic artist with a great visual style, a really unique visual style, but he scares publishers. Mm-hmm. So every publisher that I brought him to, because I at first wanted to try to secure him a page rate. So Image, the way that an Image works is that you can get an advance, but it's kind of like, if you can try to do it on your own, like that's like the best way to do it. You just ruffle less feathers that way. But like that's kind of how I do it. We work on the back end, and we're happy to do that. We end up making a page rate back. So we just have to wait for our money, essentially, is how we do it. Just working with Jeff, I wanted to try to find him money first, and it was really hard to convince anybody. The question we kept getting asked was, is this, viable in the marketplace? And the answer from them was that they didn't think so. So we proved them wrong. At the end of the day, so
yeah, right on. Yeah, it was
sorry, not sorry. Take some chances. I think that's the point. Yeah, it pays off.
So, who are the writers from any medium that kind of inspire you and push you to up your game?
This is gonna sound like I'm just joking, but every writer, basically. I mean, it's like anybody who put pen to paper is pretty inspiring to me. Now, I'm not, I'm kind of kidding, but also not really. I mean, I find things like, Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space as inspiring as I find Citizen Kane. They work in different ways, but they're both valid. But to me, I think some of the most important writers in film, the Coen brothers, for sure. I do love Orson Welles. I really love the writing of Jim Thompson. I really love the writing of Darwin Cook. I really love the writing of I like a lot of what Frank Miller did. I think Batman Year One is one of the greatest comics of all time. I think. I don't know. There's a lot of writers out there that I love. I mean, I love Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett. Stephen King is probably my favorite. And my girlfriend Marley reminds me all the time. We were talking before about internet criticism, and she reminds me all the time. Well, you don't like everything Stephen King does. Like, that's true. In fact, there's quite a bit I could pick on.
Sorry, top 5 worst Stephen King novels.
No comment. No comment.
So,
well, do we want to kind of bring it full circle back to Star Wars and talk about, if you have any, characters that you would really like to, have a go at, or any,
there is one idea that I'm pitching them that I hope they're going to say yes to, so I don't want to say that. So I'm not going to say that.
Fair.
But it would be very cool. I would really like to do a Lobot series.
No,
I think that would be exciting.
He really got a lot of he got a lot of page time in Charles Soule's
that is true.
in the Star Wars series between Empire and Jedi. So
yeah, I'm thinking we can call the series Lobot in Love. And that's no, I don't know. So I think I would really love to do something. I don't know. They wouldn't be the star. They might, play a role, but I would love to do something that involved the Sand People, the Tusken Raiders. I would love to fit them into something somewhere if I could. That would be really cool, but I don't know how or when that would happen. In terms
I'll give you
characters, I mean, I'm kind of working with some characters that I've always wanted to work on. I mean, Darth Vader is like the top, How can you? And that's the first thing I'm working on. So it's like, geez Louise. But the one of the most fun things I think has been kind of creating characters in that universe, and try to make them feel organic and a part of the universe, and like they've always belonged, like they fit. That's been probably the most fun thing for me. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I wish that I could have done a Boba Fett thing, but I feel like Boba Fett kind of got done a bunch recently.
Well, I mean, when Dark Horse had the license, it was all Boba Fett and Darth Vader, kind of.
What was the name of that one? There was like a famous one. It wasn't. What was it called?
Whoa, this one's
there
on
was a
you.
one shot, Boba Fett one shot.
The one shot.
I know what you're referencing. I think. It was almost back in the 90s.
Something hit or something. Yeah, he says hit, and
anyway,
with Boba Fett.
Yeah, I mean,
that's.
I really loved. I don't know. There's a bunch of characters. I can go prequels. I could go sequels. I could go, original trilogy. It depends on what you're looking for.
Well, I was going to say, I can get you the Sand People. If I don't know if you've read the From a Certain Point of View stories, the book. How they take kind of like the side characters and tell stories about them. Even in the Star Wars New Hope one, there's a story about the Sand People and the Jawas, and so.
Yeah, I want to do like a sitcom, but with the Sand People. Like, Dad comes home from work.
He's had a hard day rating.
I do have an idea for a thing, but they would never let me do it, so I probably have to figure a way to do it in an indie book. But it works better when it's connected to the actual property.
Sure.
But it's not about it's like something that's about being a fan.
And I don't
really fit in the canon.
Do you have any Star Wars characters that are kind of like under the radar that you're the only one that loves them type characters?
Um,
Well, Lobot, I guess, is an obvious answer there.
I mean, Lobot. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many. I love the Gonk Droid.
And I thought
I'm trying to
Ethan
pick the
Sachs.
weirdest ones.
I thought Ethan Sachs did a great one with the bounty hunters. That was fun, and I would love to see a show or something where it's just them.
Yeah.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. In terms of like really side characters, Feltapern Treveg from the Cantina. Got
Okay.
the horns.
Yeah, the devil
I
guy.
really like him. He's got a story in the Tales from Mos Eisley Cantina that's pretty lurid. He got he got had.
Hmm.
But no, I think it'd be really fun to kind of play with those characters and get to do a little like something, just like a side thing.
Well, that's the fun thing about Star Wars is that there's so many different kinds of stories you can do. And
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's like they were doing. Sorry, what?
I was saying The Mandalorian was kind of the test case for that because especially that first season is essentially a Western in space.
Right, and then they just keep doing it.
Yes.
And then keep doing it.
Well, now there's a movie.
And that's the opposite of what Star Wars is. Star Wars is let's try a new thing.
Yeah.
Well, so that's one of my criticisms of it. But I do love it, and I am going to go see Mandalorian Grogu.
Absolutely.
Right.
Um,
And I'll probably enjoy myself. That's the thing. I will probably enjoy myself. I love Star Wars.
Star Wars Ultimate Universe. Star Wars Ultimate Universe. That way, people can have their, non-canon, previous, Luke Skywalker's, power enough to stop a black hole.
Yeah,
and,
there you get your Mara Jade.
Hey,
yeah.
That make a lot of people happy. So, all right. Well, Chris, we didn't even hardly get into Peril of the Brutal Dark, but I briefly want to just say I think that book is fantastic, and I hope we get a lot more Ezra Kane in the future from you and Vertigo.
Thank you very much. There are plans for a second volume. I'm just waiting for approvals from DC proper. The editors like it, so fingers crossed we go. We'll know soon.
Awesome, and I have to say, my tip of the hat to you and everybody else involved in the creative resurgence of Vertigo. What an honor to be part of that initiative. Yeah, you should be very proud, and frankly, you should be very proud of the amount of work you've put out in the last 2-3 years. That's just been uniformly fantastic stuff, and it's all very different. So, as a reader, thank you very much.
You're gonna make me cry. But thank you. No, I mean, I understand you saying thank you, but I really have to say thank you because I wouldn't be here without you. Seriously, like I'm writing comics still because people are reading the books. So, it's very much mutually beneficial relationship. So thank you for reading.
All right.
It's because of you and people like you, reading my stuff that I'm now writing, Darth Vader. So it's kind of a wild trajectory. I started on that Texas Blood. I'm now at Darth Vader. That is the boardwalk of life. That is the Monopoly boardwalk piece in my life. So it's very cool. But thank you. Seriously.
It is very cool. Yes, sir. And thank you very much for coming on our show this week.
For sure.
Yeah. Chad?
Where can people find you?
You can't find me. No.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm on Blue Sky. I'm toying with the idea of getting back on Instagram because I'm realizing that it's a really great way to talk to people. I really don't like what Meta stands for, but I'm toying with the idea of it. But you can find me on Blue Sky. It's at Christoph Condon, Christopher without the ER, so it's at Christoph Condon .bsky.social. So you can find me there. I'm also on Patreon at patreon.com/CondonPhillips, which I need to update.
Good deal. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your thoughts with us this evening.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Chad, what do we have coming up next for the show?
Tomorrow night, we have Charles Ardai for his Gun Honey Heat Seeker thing for Titan Comics.
Very cool. Cannot wait. Please, all of you that are listening, join in and enjoy the more crime noir fun with the comic. Until then, thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting us at comic-watch.com. He's Chad, I'm Matt, and this is our show where we talk about comics. Thank you very much for getting out there and making the world a better place. Until next time.